Hello my lovely flush tube friends, welcome back to the channel. A very warm welcomes to you all. Today I am working on my stitching gnomes by Soda Stitch. As you can see, we're all set up and ready to go. Up in the top left hand corner over here you will see this is what it will look like when it's finished. And I have been using this project as my train project. So this one is almost completed, all barring this bottom left hand corner, because it sort of creeps into the chart over on this side. So I'll finish this bit when we go over and do him, but I'm currently working on the scissor gnome over here. And I have to say, it's one of those projects that I got enabled at a retreat where someone shared, I think it was a Christmas gnome. And I thought it was so cute and so lovely that I was like, I went and had a look, and me and my friend Mary Perkins sort of, I'm not sure whether we enabled each other or whether she enabled me or I enabled her, but we just know that Mags at the retreat was the instigator, whether she realised it or not, by sharing one of her Christmas finishes. So we both blame Mags for this. But then when we went on to the Soda Stitch Etsy page and saw all the different gnomes, and we both stumbled across this one and the mushroom gnomes, we totally got enabled. So here we are with a new project, of which is not usually my go-to type of stitching project, but I have to say, thoroughly enjoying it. So this one is being stitched on a 28 count even weave, and I have been predominantly using this month as my train project, which has been great. However, what it has highlighted to me is that I have a certain sweet spot for stitching on the train because of my eyes. So the 28 count is fine if it's not jiggling around when you're on the train. So the one thing I have found is when I'm trying to stitch on this, I can only really stitch on this and actually see what I'm doing when I wear my contact lenses and then put my special cross stitch readers on. Now, most of the time I tend not to wear my contact lenses into the city because I get tired eyes. But the problem is I can't use my normal glasses for this because I wear varifocals. It doesn't give me enough magnification. Now, I'm not going to sit on the train with a pair of glasses over a top of a pair of glasses, because then I would get some very, very funny looks if I did that. So I'm like, no, can't do that. So it has highlighted to me not how bad my eyes are, because they're not really that bad. But that being said, they're obviously bad enough that I require a little extra when I'm stitching on a 28 count. So it has highlighted to me that 25 count, I think, for the train is my sweet spot. So anything 25 and under is fine. As soon as I start working on anything that's like a 28 count, I have to be a bit more mindful about, have I got my contact lenses on, so that at least I can put my cross stitch readers on so that I can see what I'm doing. It doesn't help as well that when you're on the train, everything jiggles around. Even though I'm sitting there holding it, it does sort of jiggle about a bit, which then makes it a little bit more tricky to see the holes as well. So yeah, I have learned some stuff whilst doing this project on the train, but I'm still thoroughly enjoying it. Absolutely thoroughly enjoying it, which is a bit of a surprise because it's not normally the sort of thing that I would I would stitch on. And at first I wasn't sure whether this was going to be like a fad project. You know, like one of them ones where it's like, at the time it seemed like a good idea, and then as soon as you get a few stitches in, you're like, I'm not sure that this is doing it for me. But I'm finding that I'm actually quite liking it, and I like the fact that there's blocks of colour. You know, you don't have to keep changing your threads, and you can just sort of sit and stitch on it. So it is turning into a very good train project, all barring the fact that it's on a 28 count fabric. I don't know whether it's to do with the colour of the fabric, because although it looks fairly light on this video, it is like a almost like a, I don't know, a moss green coloured fabric. So it could just be that it's the colour of the fabric that I'm struggling with on the train. But yeah, all in all, not too bad. Not too bad. So my plan was to get loads of stitching done. I say loads of stitching done. More stitching done than I have done in March, because I was hoping that all the DIY and stuff would be finished. It's sort of there now. We've just got to the bit where I think it's basically tidying and cleaning. So all of the floor is finally laid and done, which is fabulous. The skirting boards are now painted and on, so they're all done. So we are just now waiting for the new sofa to turn up, which I can't wait for. I'm very, very excited about the new sofa. Which way should we go here? Look. Let's go this way. Really looking forward to getting the new sofas. But then I think other than get the sofas done and in, I think it's pretty much good. Oh, and I've got to get pictures and stuff back up, because at the moment the walls are very bare in my house, so that it's all just, yeah, I haven't put any of my stitching back up because I'm like, I don't know where I want to put things. I know how I had it last time, but it's like, well, do I want to have it laid out the same, or do I want it different? So I don't want to start putting things in the wall and making holes in the wall after it's freshly painted until I'm 100% sure where I want things to go. So I think I might wait for the sofas to turn up first, because the sofa backs on the new sofas are actually a lot lower than the original sofas, so it may look completely different. So yeah, we're going to wait for the sofas to turn up, and we're going to keep the bare walls for now, just for now. So, but pretty much the plan for my Easter weekend was to sit and get some stitching done, because hubby was supposed to have been away racing. That didn't happen because hubby ended up getting rained off at racing because the weather was not really the best. Then that's not unusual for Easter, that's a thing. So he ended up coming home, and then instead of me sitting there doing what I thought I was doing, because he come home and then cracked on with a bit more of the DIY type stuff, it sort of dragged me into it. So I didn't really get as much done as I would like, but it has made it so that at least we got the decorating finalized, if you like, and got it fixed and done. What did come of that though was that I found, I don't know if you find this, but once you've sort of like, because you move everything out of the rooms and you go and sort of store it elsewhere, everything that hubby had that needed to be put up out the way, he ended up trying to put in my office. And I was like, why do you keep putting things in my office? I'm like, I have to work in there. And he was like, well, because there isn't anywhere else for anything to go. So I turned around and said, well, use the utility room. And he went, I can't. He said, the cupboards are full of your craft stuff. And I was like, no, they can't be. I was like, what are you talking about? I haven't got any craft stuff in the utility room. And he was like, you have. He said, the cupboards are full. He said, of all your stuff. So I was like, right, okay. So because it was the Easter weekend, and the fact that he was still making a bit of mess and flicking up some dust and stuff, I was like, well, I'm not gonna sit there try and stitch or even attempt to get my stitching out if he's going to make this much mess. So I decided that I would let's see if I can get this to, is that showing up properly? That's it. I don't know why it's doing that. I think it's the light from outside. So I decided that I would not sit and do any stitching, and I would do some sorting. So for those of you that joined my channel back from the very beginning, what actually got me into stitching, believe it or not, was beading. So I used to do jewelry making and beading. That's how it all started. And then that segued into cross stitching. But when I very first started doing cross stitch, I was basically a full coverage girl, because anything more technical than just little X's frightened the life out of me, and I honestly didn't think I was capable of doing anything other than little X's. So needless to say, all of the beading type stuff just got thrown into cupboards in the utility room, with me sitting there saying to myself, oh, I'll sort that out at some point. You know, I'll go through all that, you know, do a bit of a destash, or, you know. And the problem is, for me specific, is I don't like to destash sometimes things that I used to do, because there's no guarantee that I don't want to go back to it in the future. And then I'm kicking myself because I'm like, why did I give all my stuff away? Because, you know, if I'd have kept it all, I'd have loads of stuff. Only trouble is, I didn't realise exactly how much stuff I had, in all honesty. In all honesty, I mean, I have got so much jewelry making stuff, it was laughable. So on the bank holiday, I decided that I would put my time to good use, and I would go through all the cupboards. And in my mind, I was sitting there thinking, well, you know, it's beading. And since as a lot of what I do in cross stitch now has beads on it, I was like, well, most of it can just go into the storage of my craft room, because I now have a craft room. It is an office stroke craft room, but it's a craft room nevertheless. I sat there and thought to myself, well, that's fine, because whatever's in there will just come out, and it will go into my stash. Now, in all fairness, there's a lot of seed beads and very small beads that work perfectly for the cross stitch. So they were the easy things to sort through. What I didn't realise I had a lot of was the jewelry making stuff, like the findings and the, you know, the metal stuff that you use to make, you know, like the jump rings and the clasps and the this and the that's. I really did hold a lot. And then when I've gone through the cupboards, I'm like, well, I can't, you know, because at first you're sitting there thinking, well, you know, you can just give some stuff away to the charity shop. But when I sat and looked at it, half of it was still in its packets when I originally bought it. And I was like, there is so much money tied up in all this stuff. I was like, how can I justify just giving this away? So I was like, well, no, I'm going to have to try and sort through it and see whether there's a way to try and destash it. Now, obviously, not doing the whole jewelry making thing anymore. And unlike with cross stitch, where there's a community that I can reach out to, I didn't really have a community as such. There wasn't people that I knew that did jewelry making. So therefore, it wasn't like I could say, well, you know, are you in need of any stuff? You know, if I did a job lot, would you be interested in taking it off my hands? And I'm still in that position, because when I've gone through all the stuff, I'm like, well, it's all, there's so much stuff here, I can't just give it to Goodwill. Because there's probably hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of jewelry making stuff and findings and metal work and all of that good stuff. And even some of the beads, like the beads that are just too big, they would be too big for any cross stitch project. So now I'm in a dilemma of like, well, what do I do with it all? I mean, I tried to look to see whether there was like a, you know, like we have a cross stitch destash, whether there's like a destash type thing for my beading stuff, to see whether I can at least sell some of it and at least claw a little bit of the money back, and then I can throw it back into my cross stitch, into the hobby that I tend to be resonating to. So first of all, I need to find somewhere where I can look to see whether there's an equivalent destash, or whether there's any. I mean, I don't know. Do cross stitchers do beading as well? You know, but I mean jewelry making beading, not beading, because all of the beads, all of the seed beads and the sorts of things that I would use for my cross stitch, I'm intending to keep, because there's no point in getting rid of it, because I can now, at least I'm in a position that I can substitute certain beads for called for beads in charts for stuff that's in my stash, because I've got so much of it, it's ridiculous. So I'm like, well, I've sorted through all of the beads that I intend to keep for me, but all of the stuff that's more like the jewelry making type stuff needs to go. So because hubby wanted the utility room back, I sort of moved it all out of there. But you know, when it's like you say you're going to sort it out, but all I did was basically moved it from one room to another. I took it out of the utility room and brought it in here into the office. But then it was like it was everywhere, and I'm like, but I don't want to keep it all. So then I sat there and sorted through it. So I had one pile for my stuff that's going to go into my stash, and one pile for like some sort of destash. So I was like, right, okay. So then I needed to work from home, but I had it all over the sofa that's literally behind me. So I'm like, well, I can't leave it like that. I've got to do something with this. So I thought, well, I know what I'll do. All of the stuff that's going into my stash, I can just throw in one of the drawers and sort through at a later date. So that bit was the easy bit. But then the stuff that I'm intending on destashing or doing something with, I'm like, well, what am I going to do with that? Because I can't. There's too much of it to just have it laying around. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll stick it up in the cupboards above where the sofa is, out the way, so it's not encroaching on my storage. And I can find somewhere to get rid of it all or destash it, and then pull it out as and when I do that. But for now, it just needed a home. It just needed somewhere to be out the way, because I can't have all that stuff all over the place. So because I was in such a rush, I was due to log on to work. I literally grabbed all the boxes of all these tiny little findings, little jump rings, you know, all of the little tiny bits and pieces, stacked all the boxes one on top of the other, lifted the boxes up to put them in the cupboard, and I must have caught the top box on the top of the cupboard, because all of a sudden all the boxes went flying. And the problem was that as they hit the floor, all of the boxes basically fell apart. Or not fell apart, but opened. And I had, I could have cried. Yeah, it was that bad. There was beads, and I've got ceramic floors, so it isn't even like I've got carpets. So that when they hit the carpet, they just stayed put. They didn't. They bounced. Everything, you know, all of the beads started bouncing around all over the floor. All of the metal findings, the tiny little things, just went sprawling across the room. And even my husband, he sort of came in with the dogs in tow, and he was just like, what on earth? And you know, when you're just like, if he says anything to me, if he says anything whatsoever, I am going to lose it. So I just, like, you know, when you sort of do that weird, get out. It was like that. And he was like, okay. Because obviously he saw what had happened. And he was like, I'll be out here when you're ready. And literally just walked out of the room. I have never been, I couldn't decide whether I was angry Because I was like, what sort of a stupid person would try and lift all of these boxes with all of these beads and tiny, tiny little things up all in one go? It was because I was rushing. I know what it was. You know, because under normal circumstances, I would have put up one box at a time. But because I was trying to rush, because I needed to get logged on for work, I want to just put all the boxes up at the same time. So, yeah. Needless to say, for the fact that I was rushing because I needed to get logged on for work, I then had to try and scoop up what I could into a pile on the floor, log on for work, and then sit and stare at this big, horrible mess. And I wouldn't mind, but every time I got up from my chair, another bead would try and sort of like trip me up. They were like, you know, rolling around all over the floor and coming out from all places, all crevices. And I was like, what on earth? It took me hours, people. Because at first I was like, do you know what? I'm going to get that little magnet. I've got one of those, I don't know. They're like an extension wand with like a magnet end on. They're great for finding needles, so you sort of slide them along the floor and it just sort of picks up with the, like, because it's the magnet. So I got that out thinking that would work, only to realise that actually the findings, the jump rings and all of that, it doesn't stick. It's not magnetic. It must be metal. I'm not quite sure what it is, but the magnet didn't work, so it didn't pick anything up. And I've got, say, long nails. They're fairly long nails. I ended up having to sit there and painstakingly try and get these beads and jump rings and stuff off the floor. And in the end, the only way to actually get them to lift off the floor so that I could actually put them in little piles, I had to lick my finger, stick them to my finger, because I couldn't do it between my nails. It was awful. And I was kicking myself, because at that point I was like, right, well, maybe this is answering the question. I'm sitting here saying, well, I'm going to keep hold of this stuff to destash it. Maybe I just need to sweep it all up with a dustpan and brush and throw it in the bin and be done with it. One, that's decluttering and it gets rid of it. But then I was like, no, because that's just wasteful, you know. But then it was the thought that I had to sit and sort through everything that had already been pre-sorted. It was already, I mean, that was the thing. It was all ready to go the way it was. It was all in its own little compartments, its own little baggies. And now it's like literally all over the floor. And even like bearing in mind that we're talking like a week or so later, I'm still seeing these tiny little jump rings appearing out of nowhere. Or if I like move a bit of furniture, there's more of it. It's yeah. But I did painstakingly sit there and go through and sort it all back out, because I was like, I can't let this beat me. I need to be the bigger person here. So yeah, that was a very big lesson learned. But still leaves me with the same situation, that I really didn't do much stitching at all on the bank holiday. I did a lot of sorting of stuff, only to put it back in another cupboard. So I was like, well, that wasn't the plan. The plan was to, you know, get rid of the stuff that I didn't want and keep the stuff that I do want, and just sort through the stuff that I do want. But I feel like I'm no further forwards. Other than the fact that the utility room is now clear, I'm assuming for hubby to fill up. Because that's what I said to him. I said, well, I'm not taking all my stuff out just for you to fill up with your stuff. I don't mind if it's house-related stuff. I said, but I'm not doing this so that you can then just use it for your needs. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, in the meantime, the cupboards that I had free in here that were for, you know, stitching stuff are now full of destash stuff for beading, would you believe? So I need to figure out a way to sell some of it. Like I say, there's so much stuff there, and it's it's worth so much that I can't just give it away to Goodwill or to the charity shop, as we call them over here. So yeah, it's I'm in a dilemma. I'm in a dilemma of what to do with it all, and I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone that does the whole jewelry making thing where they'd want the, let's say, the hardware of beading, and then maybe the beads that are not sort of, they're not the sort of things that you would use for cross stitch. I don't know anyone that would use any of those bits and pieces, so it's not even like I can say to someone, you know, would you be interested in these bits and pieces? Let someone take what they want, agree a price, and then whatever's left, give it to Goodwill. I'm not even in that position because I don't know anyone that does jewelry making or that would have a need for all of these beads. So yeah, it's it just goes to show you that, you know, I sit there and think I'm going to keep these bits and pieces in the hope, you know, that maybe I might need it or I'll go back to it. But the reality of it is, I mean, they've been, how long have they been there now? I mean, they've got to have been there for, how long have I been doing floss tube? Floss tube, I've been on floss tube for 8 years. So it's over 8 years. Over 8 years I've had all this stuff and done nothing with it. So finally I've done something with it, and all I've done is moved it from one place to another. I've thrown it all over the floor and picked it all back up. So I can't say that I'm feeling like I've achieved that much. But at least I know what's there now, and I know it does need some attention. The only good thing was that I managed to go through all of the bits that were suitable for sort of like the cross stitch type stuff, and I've got a lot more beads, like seed beads. So when I'm looking to kit up projects that require beads, rather than just, you know, going with the beads that, like the Mill Hill beads, I might just use what I've got in my stash, as long as I've got something in that colour, and I've got quite a lot of colours. And to be honest, if I'm completely honest, I do tend to find that some of the beads that you get from Mill Hill, they're not of very good quality. They're not evenly sized, whereas a lot of the Delica beads and the Miyuki beads that I have from my beading and my seed bead making, I think it's called peyote beading. A lot of those are Delicas and Miyuki beads, which are more evenly sized, and I tend to find are actually a better quality. So yeah, at least I'm going to save myself some money in that respect. I just need to find somewhere or someone that likes jewelry making and wants to add stuff to their stash, because I've got a lot more of it that I'm never going to use. I'm not going to go back to jewelry making. You know, I've got too many other things that I love. You know, I love my gardening now. That takes up a lot of time. I love my cross stitch. I don't think that's ever going to change. I think that's enough hobbies. On top of which, I have just recently gone back to dancing. I was a bit unsure of whether I was going to be able to following the hip replacement, but the one thing I have noticed since I've had my hip replaced is actually the more I keep it moving, the better it is. The less I move it around, the worse it is. So I think the dancing isn't going to be a problem. I might have some limitations for the Latin dances, maybe more so than the ballroom. But yeah, I've only gone back just recently, and at first I was a bit apprehensive, let's say, because I was like, well, I don't know what I remember. I mean, I didn't realise it had been so long, but it's been 4 years because of COVID. I hadn't danced for, I think it's 3 to 4 years, And then I was like, I don't even think I remember the steps but literally it is like riding a bike. As soon as you go back, I mean, I might be a bit rusty, probably not as, I'm not as good at it as I was. But the actual steps, I haven't forgotten. I think just my technique probably has slipped a little bit. So I've gone to a new dance school. Did a bit of a little tryout to see what I thought and see what they thought of me. Thinking that, I'll do probably just do some dancing for a year or so, and then possibly look at going back into doing some competitions. And last weekend when I was there on the weekend, because because of where it is, I need to do my dance lessons on a Saturday. So there's another thing. It sort of eats into more time on my weekends, which is predominantly more my stitchy time or my gardening time. So I'm trying to balance everything. But when I went to my lesson, he turned around and said, right, he said, well, you said you was interested in getting back in competing. So I was like, well, it would be nice, I said, to have some goals. And he turned around and he said, right, okay. He said, we need to get you qualified for Blackpool for the Winter Gardens then. So he said, there's, the final qualifiers are in July, beginning of July. So he said, we'll aim for that. So, when you are a bit shocked, because I was like, hold on a minute, what did you just say? I said, what, you mean actually compete this year? And he was like, well, yeah. He said, why not? So yeah, I've got some more things that I'm aiming for, people. But I am thoroughly enjoying it. And when as soon as you do it, it was like, God, I didn't realise how much I'd missed this. As soon as I started dancing, I was like, oh yes, that makes me feel good. And to be honest, as much as I love my stitching is very much my downtime. But I do love something that is movement related. It's not like I can go running anymore. Although I will and do go to the gym and do a little bit of exercise, it's not I don't get a real buzz out of it. Whereas with dancing, I do. The only problem is all of my dance wear, so all of my dresses are my Latin dresses and ballroom dresses. They're a bit too tight now because obviously I've put on a bit of weight since I did it. So on Saturday the 27th or 28th of April, I'm going to see a dressmaker to see what we can do about organising to have some new dresses made for me for competition, because the one thing I know for sure is my confidence is not what it was. I don't feel that confident about my dancing. And what does help is if you've got a nice frock on that you feel confident in and you feel comfortable in, it makes the whole experience, you feel a lot better about it and a lot more confident. So I'm like, well, to be confident, I need to be comfortable. Trying to shoehorn myself into a dress that's a little bit tighter than it was back in the day is not the best. Is not the best approach when you're already going to be a little bit nervous. So I decided that I would have to throw a little bit of expense at it and get some new dresses made. So I had that to look forward to too. So it's been, considering that where are we? It's not even halfway through the month. A lot has happened this month. A lot has happened. Probably not as much happening on the stitching front as I would like, but I'll take what I can get. I keep rotating this the wrong way, don't I? Let's switch that back round the other way. He's got a lovely little moustache. Look at him. So yeah, so that's what's been happening in my life, and that's the equivalent of basically me stitching on the train into London. I don't think I did too bad. But it is now, because I already tried to record this once already and failed miserably, it is now time for me to go, because I need to go and log on for work, grab a cup of coffee, feed the girls who are sleeping lovely on the sofa behind me. But yeah, there we go. A little bit of what's been going on in my life. But like I say, if you know anyone that does jewelry making that might be interested in a bit of a job lot destash, you know, send them my way. I can send pictures of all the stuff that I've got. But I do need to do something with it so I can clear space for more cross-stitch stuff, because, you know, I've got cross-stitch stuff that's shoehorned in other places and could be spread out and placed more efficiently. Instead, I've now got half a ton of beading stuff in those areas that I now need to use. So the fun of it all. Who would have thought, people, that I would be destashing so much jewelry making stuff, and here I am with a whole load of cross stitch stuff that all needs homes. Everything needs a new place. I think I'm in a sorting and organising. It's definitely the spring clean, especially after I've done decorating. It just makes me want to do lots of cleaning and lots of, you know, decluttering. And I'm in mode of decluttering, but that's only any good as long as you've got a good place to declutter too. So there we go. So we've done some stitching. We've got, you know, we've got his nose. We've got his little moustache. I think I'll probably start now going up and doing his little head and the scissors. That'll probably be something that I do on the weekend, or not, because I don't tend to get this one out on the weekend. That I normally stitch on my home projects on the weekend. So yeah, maybe we'll stick his hat on him and his head on him. Maybe we'll get that done next week. Who knows, people? Who knows what next week's going to bring? Well, I hope you got lots of stitching done. I hope you all are geared up for a lovely weekend. And until next time, people, thanks for stitching with me, and bye bye for now.